Okay. It looks like we're live. Welcome everybody to the Senate Democratic Caucus. It is the 19th of January, 2021. And we are going to do some quick updates, but we're going to begin with two more in-depth updates. A bill that's coming on the floor out of Senate Economic Development that Michael's going to talk, that Senator Sirotkin's going to talk about, and the ongoing cleanup, fixes, end of year money issues in the what Senator Kitchel's calling the mini CRF bill, but it's the last bits of money that we're appropriating. And so I believe Michael is with us, and so we will start with Michael, and then we will, after we finish hearing from Michael and from Senator Sirotkin and Senator Kitchel, we'll go with a quick committee updates on what's happening this week, beginning in reverse alphabetical order with transportation. So, Senator Sirotkin, it's yours. I think you're muted, Senator Sirotkin.
I was asking if you can hear me, and you couldn't.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm talking about a bill that will come out of our committee probably tomorrow, S14. It's a very short bill, but it corrects some very important unintended consequences of a bill we dealt with last year on the last day of the session. I'm going to try and keep this brief because if I go on long, it's probably going to confuse everyone, including myself. But it's not that complicated on the surface. You may recall last year in a bill called S237, we tried to address some land use policies that would make for greater dense housing in downtown and neighborhood development areas and more inclusive development. Our committee went around the state last year and we heard from a lot of developers that we need to make housing less costly to develop. And we're all very good at giving away money to subsidize housing, but it's high time we come up with some policies that do not have monetary impact, that lower the cost of producing housing. So the bill that came out of the Senate had a raft of ideas and policy changes to increase density in our downtowns and neighborhood development areas. It passed the Senate. We were unable to preserve some of the big ticket items like Act 250 and wastewater permits, which our committee felt was a duplication of what municipalities do, but we did get several policies through. Went over to the House, and probably half of those policies got stripped as well. To the issue at hand, one of the provisions to incentivize the production of greater dense housing was to, we did things like improve access to accessory dwelling units. We did improve the development of very small lots that were able to hook up to water. And part of the package was a provision tucked in the bill that dealt with deed restrictions and easements that private parties would agree to. And what this provision, and this is the heart of S14, tried to do is that we have these new policies in place to improve density. We don't want private parties through deed restrictions to undermine those new policies. So in the case of an ADU, for instance, we were increasing the size that was permissible for an ADU to 900 square feet. We didn't want two parties that were subdividing or selling land to each other, buying and selling land, to say, even though your bylaws allow for 900 square foot ADUs, we're not going to allow ADUs of that size on our property. So that was the deed restriction language, and it applied to 5 or 6 changes to that promoted density. The House took out half of those density enhancement provisions, and they said, oh my God, the way it's written was it says this section, which is now being diluted and gutted, is where we prohibit deed restrictions among private parties. So they changed the reference to the section number where the changes were being made, and they said you can't, in your deed restrictions, block any development that otherwise would be allowed, land development that would otherwise be allowed by the bylaws. Land development is an extremely broad term. It includes construction, water access, driveways, uses, everything like that. So they made this change that prohibited any deed restrictions among private parties that had anything to do with any land development at all. So while at the same time they were narrowing the density requirements, they were expanding the prohibition on land development. So if I haven't lost you already, it set up a nightmare of a situation in the real estate legal community that they sent over to us with no time left. And I'm not sure we had to fully understand of what they were doing, but we had no time to fix it, and we passed it. And then I started getting all these emails from the real estate bar. Some of you may have gotten those as well. I was able to nip it in the bud by telling the real estate bar that we will fix this when we get back. This is obviously an unintended consequence. I'll give you one example. We have scores of examples. I'll give you one example that may frame the issue better that was given to us yesterday. Somebody wants to develop a solar farm in a neighboring property, and the seller is willing to allow that solar farm that everybody wants, but he doesn't want it to be the full 50 acres. He wants it to be 25 acres to protect his property. If the buyer and seller agreed to that reasonable solution of we're going to have a 25-acre solar farm, then that, under what the House did and what we accepted last year, that 25-acre solar farm would be illegal and banned, because under the bylaws, it could be a 50-acre solar farm. So a good project of land development will be barred by what we passed last year. And we're just trying to fix that. And I'll stop there. It'll be a very short bill. And I'm sure if you haven't heard from any of your lawyers in your community, you could talk to them about it if they know anything about real estate law. What we did had unintended consequences, and we're trying to fix that, and we'll fix it retroactively to January 1st, which was the effective date of last year's law.
Great. Thank you very much, Michael. Just given that we have only half an hour, just slightly less than half an hour, I'm going to ask you to take your questions offline and do emails with Senator Sirotkin.
Absolutely.
Is that okay? Great.
And that's the same.
Senator Kitchell, and if we don't get to everybody by the time we're done at about 3 of 1, I will have an email update for the people who don't get to go. So Senator Kitchell, she has a more expanded update on what they're about to be doing, presenting to us.
This morning, reference was made to a committee bill that was passed out of appropriations. We call it a technical or sort of a mini Corona Relief Fund bill to deal with some of the more time-sensitive issues associated with that funding stream. Highlights would be because that money got extended and the expenditure deadline got moved up a year, we are allowing no new money, but an extension of the allocation to be used to help address homelessness and the housing needs associated with that population. We also know that the money for rental assistance ran out. They thought they would have enough, allowed reallocation of some money, which in reality they needed. So we are adding 2.8 million to that rental assistance, so that this is Vermont Housing, State Housing. It's been administering the program so that the eligible households applying in December can get assistance. Right now, those applications are being held, benefits being held, because the money has been exhausted. The other change that we're making is simply allowing, because of language that was put in the appropriations bill, 966, I believe it was, that sunsets accelerated broadband connectivity programs. End of December, it meant that work underway and bills that would come in after the sunset couldn't technically be paid. So it is simply dealing with a problem that the sunset has created with the work that was authorized prior to December 20th. No additional work is authorized. I know that that's been a source of a lot of emails, but Maria Royale is very clear. We wrote the legislation. It's simply pay bills for work that has been authorized and is in progress. We are extending, which everybody may have known, we were able to get FEMA coverage for the Everyone Eats program. And that meant that the Corona relief funding, instead of needing 100%, we only needed 25% was allocated to serve as the FEMA match. With those additional FEMA receipts and what we have for CRF money already allocated, it means that we'll be able to extend the Everyone Eats program through June. So that is one of the other changes that was made possible by the fact that FEMA money is available to help underwrite that cost. We're continuing funding of $75,000 e-filing fees. That was a topic of much discussion in judiciary and probably in finance as well around the court fees. We paid them through the end of the year. This additional quarter will allow the policy committees to look at fees, the issue of fees in the judiciary, and allow the court administrator's office time to negotiate the contract with the vendor. A couple of other technical changes around reporting. And we simply want to make sure that with the unknown money coming in, if it's possible to swap out some of that money for CRF, which we might have more flexibility on. It's simply, for example, housing, then we have language that allows that process. So this is really the heart of the bill. I think the important things are, for most people, would be certainly helping money for the homelessness. We also are allowing more money to go to long-term care facilities, which, as everyone knows, have been really have borne the brunt of very significant COVID outbreaks. For the money to go assist those facilities, as well as to our adult day programs to help them continue, since they've been essentially shut down and have no revenues. So that's the purpose of this bill. Very narrow, time sensitive. We wanted to move it out quickly and let the Budget Adjustment Act, which has other more complex policies or appropriations, can move at another pace. And so that's what this bill does.
Thank you, Senator Kitchell. That was terrific. And you guys were whizzes at doing this fast. Let's take our questions offline to Senator Kitchell. If you have any, please ask her offline, or other members of the committee. Thank you. Helpful. And Senator Kitchell, that'll be on the floor tomorrow also?
Yes. Yes.
Along with S14. I believe. Okay, great. So
S14 will not be on the floor till Friday, because we haven't.
Till Friday, right? Okay, great. Oh. Thanks. So let's start with transportation. Senator Mazza.
Very quickly, we are spending the rest of the week going over all the from the Agency of Transportation, all the different departments, getting an update exactly where we stand for this year, and then we'll be moving into next year's budget probably next week. So that's all I have to report today. Thank you.
Thank you. That was speedy. Natural resources, Senator Bray.
I don't think I can be quite that fast, but we spent time last week hearing about some basic services that have been impacted by COVID, just to make sure that they're all responding and keeping pace. So we're talking about water, drinking water, wastewater, stormwater and solid waste. We're almost finished with that tour, and the good news is for people that these services have all adjusted on the fly and are, as usual, working pretty quietly and smoothly in the background, providing service to everyone. This week, we're going to start down the road on energy-related issues and that is going to be in the form of sort of a primer on where we are. EAN has a great annual report. I'll make that available once we have it, to the full Senate for those who are interested in sort of the state of the state on energy issues and environmental issues related to energy. We'll also be hearing from the Department of Public Service. We asked them several years ago to write their report from the point of view of please make recommendations rather than only report out what's going on. Also give us your best practices that you believe would be the most cost-effective next steps. So we're trying to make an emphasis on actionable items. And then we also have the PUC delivering its Act 62 report. That's all about how would we have all fuels energy efficiency program for the state of Vermont. And it also leads into how might we do more weatherization, because we know it's low-hanging fruit, but there's an awful lot of that fruit still hanging. So we'd like to work on picking up the pace. And last, the governor issued an executive order last Thursday. We'll be spending this Thursday going through that executive order to understand both the sort of appropriateness of using the executive order in that way, as well as the merits of the change being made to the Natural Resources Board. That's it.
That's a lot. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Judiciary, Senator Sears. I think you're muted.
Gotta unmute. I was muted.
Ah,
The story of my Zoom life is being muted and unmuted at the wrong times. Judiciary is going to start out tomorrow morning on S30, which is a bill sponsored by many of you, dealing with firearms, prohibiting possession of firearms at childcare facilities, hospitals, and certain public buildings, which obviously is really relevant given activities in the country today. And then we'll continue our work on Justice Reinvestment 2, which will require several changes in the way we do probation. All of this, all the Justice Reinvestment 2 work is designed to eventually get us out of Mississippi. I almost said Tennessee. It was years ago we were in Tennessee with our felons, so that we can bring all Vermonters back home eventually. And that's really the goal here of this committee, is to continue to work to reduce prison population without endangering public safety. And so that'll be a bill that we'll be dealing with. And then we're going to continue to work on expungement, which is another bill that will help us, I think, to, in many ways, recognize that people do change, and when they do, after a certain amount of time, they're no more likely to commit a crime than anyone else, yet there's certain impediments to them because they have a criminal record. So that's an important bill. We also have a bill on the insanity defense competencies team. Last week, we took testimony on the status of criminals trials, which are backed up terribly in this state. We have people incarcerated waiting for their trial because of COVID. There may be trials starting in Brattleboro in the near future, but again, COVID is holding it up. This week, we're going to take testimony on the status of civil trials, because those are being held up as well. And so people that are waiting for negotiations with insurance companies, for example, or others that they're suing are being backed up because nobody has an incentive to do it because there's no jury trial. So that's what we're doing. And
Right. Terrific. Thank you very much. Senator McCormick, on institutions.
Yes, thanks. I'm not going to be telling anyone anything they don't already know. This is just sort of reviewing and referring to rather than informing. The Institutions Committee deals with other things, but is mainly focused on one bill, and that is the capital construction bill, which deals with, as the name implies, capital construction, and which is funded through bonding. And so we deal with the long-term capital construction and with the indebtedness that supports that. We take advice from the Capital Debt Advisory Committee, whose recommendations are only advisory, but historically the legislature and the governor they have gone along with the recommendations. The state has been working at lowering our indebtedness, our capital indebtedness, our bond indebtedness. The high point was 2011, and we are now down in 2020, became a lower level, more or less commensurate with the early 2000s. Excuse me. The recommendation we are now dealing with, the capital construction bill is a 2-year bill, and we are in the first year of developing the 2-year bill. The recommendation is $123,180,000 over the 2-year period. We have heard mainly from Treasurer Pierce and her staff on this, and of course the committee. As everyone knows, our bond rating was downgraded. That's the bad news. The good news is Vermont still has the best bond rating of the 6 New England states, and it's still actually a good bond rating, not as good as it was.
Right.
And that's about it for now.
Terrific, thanks. Senator Lyons with Health and Welfare.
Thank you. This week, we are continuing our work on funding to help within the COVID emergency. Last week, we looked at the what transpired and talked with a number of organizations and individuals who have benefited by the CARES funding. This week, we're looking at the new federal dollars and federal funding and guidelines that are coming to us. So we're meeting jointly again with House Human Services and House Healthcare. You're all welcome to listen in if you want. We're doing all of that at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning for a few hours. One of our priorities in committee, of course, will be to continue work on healthcare reform. So this week will give us an opportunity to get our feet on the ground with funding issues, sort of what we call Healthcare 101, as well as looking at the Green Mountain Care Board and other areas. Then we'll also start going through some of the bills that are coming to us or have come to our committee. I do want to give a heads up on one bill that we will be seeing, and it will come either from the House or originate in the Senate, but that will be an extension of some of the policies that have been so critical for our healthcare providers, our long-term care facilities and others. There's a significant need to make some changes to move the deadlines that we put in place. So that's not an immediate event because frankly, your Health and Welfare Committee did think ahead, and we put deadlines in that wouldn't give us pressure at the beginning of the session. But nevertheless, we do need to make some of those changes. So that's really it for us this week. It's a learning period and looking at federal funding that is coming to us. We welcome your joining us if you would like to do that at any time. So thank you.
Great. Just given the time frame, Senator White, I'm going to ask if Senator Campion gets to go first because their committee is going to start at 1. And Senator Campion, do you mind going next? And then we'll revert back to our reverse alphabetical order.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, at 1 o'clock, we are going to continue our walk through higher education in Vermont. We're going to be hearing from President Garamella, and then we're going to hear from the Select Committee on the Future of Public Higher Education. Last week, we spent some time talking about the state of our schools and school children as it relates to COVID. Teachers, staff, etc. Jeff Fannin from the NEA has agreed to take the lead on that conversation with our other educational partners throughout the state and come back to the committee on Tuesday with hopefully information and a bit of a plan going forward that we can share with other committees in terms of immediate needs as well as future needs, looking at what students may have missed academically, etc. We are going to take a bit of a, well, I wouldn't say quite a pause, but on Thursday, if anybody's interested in joining us, many of you signed on to Senator McCormick's civic education bill. This is, we thought we would take a moment, actually the afternoon on Thursday, to look at the state of civic education. We're also referring to it as how do you educate for a democracy. We're hearing from some national experts as well as people here in Vermont, getting an understanding of where things are with regard to how students learn about civics and becoming active participants in a democracy. So if anybody's interested in joining us on Thursday, that would be great. And then finally, I'll just mention we are continuing our tutorial on education financing on Wednesday. We'll also have some updates from Ledge Council on Act 46 and the recent decision that came down the courts on public funding or dual enrollment and religious institutions.
Great. Thank you very much. And I also know that appropriations is starting at 1. Senator Kitchell, did you have anything additional to add, or are you okay?
I'm fine.
Okay, great. Then Senator White, government operations?
Sure. We're going to look at this afternoon the opt-in, opt-out option for towns around the cannabis bill. We are also going to hear from around the census and what that might look like for us, just a report going forward. We are also going to have an update from OPR and VLCT and EMS systems around their needs going forward and how they were affected by CARES money and what they need going forward. So it's going to be all, we're going to look at those. We are then going to hear the Racial Equity Advisory panel has Susanna Davis has a report that she's going to give us, and Eitan has a report on the RDAP, and I can never remember what RDAP stands for, but it's around the judiciary system and data collection, and we're going to hear that. And then we're also going to hear from the National Guard, their fears around the exposure to their members that are being deployed and how we might help them if there's any possibility of getting them vaccinated before they leave. And then the preparedness bill that we passed last year and what we might need to, that didn't pass the House, and what we might need to do to add more things to it and get that passed. That's about
Great.
it this week.
That's a lot also. Our plates are filling up here. Senator Cummings on finance.
I don't think she's here, Senator.
Okay, then we will go. Senator Sorokin, did you have anything additional you'd like to add about what we're looking at this week?
Yes, I'll be brief. We're going to finish our work on S10, which is the extension of unemployment eligibility changes due to COVID and chargeability changes due to COVID. And we're going to start getting into housing big time. There's a lot of updates we need to hear about from programs we established, and we're very excited that hopefully we can get some flexibility into the 200 million and additional money potentially from the Biden administration to do some long overdue permanent changes to our housing needs. I'm going to start.
Right. Great. And so we'll end unless Senator Cummings has joined us. I don't know if she has. Has she joined us? No. Okay. Then we'll go to Senator Starr and finish up with Senator Starr in agriculture.
Yeah, thank you. Busy week last week. We had the Ag Agency and VHCB and VITA and on their findings and how well the COVID money programs worked, and they seem to be very satisfied, and their people that they served are very appreciative of what we did back last spring and summer and fall to help them along the way. We have Forest and Parks coming in later this week to give an update on the money that they received for the forestry industry. But basically this week we're going to be focusing on our food security programs, making sure that we have adequate supplies. We've got a host of people coming in, like such as the food bank and people from food sciences and food systems from UVM. So we're going to be working on that. The other issue that I'd like to mention to the other members is that next week, Thursday, we're going to have a hearing in regards to the report that Commissioner Pishak and his group put together in regards to the Vermont dairy industry pricing regulations. And that is on our webpage from Ag, and we're going to host as many people as suitable on our Zoom meeting so that they can take part, listen, and even participate. So that's where we are. We're busy and things are going as well as can be expected.
Thank you very much. Before we depart, because we've got 2 more minutes, President Pro Tem, Senator Kitchell before President Pro Tem. Senator Kitchell.
I do have time to respond to Senator Hardy's question, which I think probably is one that is shared by many people. What we're doing here in the bill regarding the broadband, the accelerated broadband connectivity program, is to authorize payment for those projects where contracts were in place before December 20th. Right. Not all the CRF allocation was spent. There's about 3.8 million. The original language in the bill talks about any money not expended reverts back for reallocation. So I want to assure senators that this bill only deals with contracts and services in place December 20th. It does not preempt in any way the need to decide how that unexpended money is used, for what, and what the standards are. That is a topic for further committee discussion. So I just want to be clear on that. It in no way opens the door and allows the department to authorize the expenditure of anything that was not contracted for by December 20th, which, since it's in the past, you either know it was contracted for or it was not.
Great. Thank you very much for that clarification. Quickly, Senator Ballant, did you have something additional to add?
Just briefly, be looking for an email from Carolyn Wesley. A number of people wanted a review of how executive orders work in the timeline. I asked Luke to put that together for all of you. Also included in that email from Carolyn, a number of senators had asked for instructions for setting up their own Zoom link to use to set up meetings with either constituents or advocates. So everything that you need should be right there. And Carolyn said, if you need assistance, she's happy to help.
Great, thank you. And before we go, I just want to make sure you all print out your Senate disclosure form and get it to Secretary Bloomer's office ASAP. And I think that is it for right now, unless somebody has a pressing 1-second addition.
And your oath form that you have to sign.
And your oath form that you have to sign if you weren't there. Thanks. Thank you all.
We
Oh,
mail those, you think we mail those? Do we use snail mail to get them to jump in?
I'm snail mailing mine.
Okay,
Senator
just checking.
McCormick.
Yeah,
Sen-
that's my question is that there are times when you quote, sign something electronically. He wants a paper copy?
I believe I don't know. You'll need to email and ask him.
Okay.
I don't know
okay.
the answer to that. I assume he wants a hard copy, but
I emailed him both scanned copies and he seemed happy with that for whatever that's worth.
great. Options are everything.
Okay.
On that happy note, I bid you adieu. Have great